All right. It's time to rethink how we measure labor in the United States, says my next guest. The way we do it is outdated, outmoded, out of time. Time for something new. And, that's true of a lot of the numbers we rely on here when we talk about the economy. Inflation, for example, is not measured the way it was like when Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan were in office. They changed it. So inflation and things look smaller. They look, they cook the books all the time. Gene Marks is a CPA. He understands numbers. He also owns and operates the Marks Group PC, a highly successful 10-person firm that provides technology and consulting to small and medium-sized companies. Gene, thank you for being here.
Steve, thank you very much for having me on. I'm excited to talk with you.
The problem with most people in Washington and in government in general is that they are mathematically impaired or mathematically illiterate. Well, you laugh, but I'm not wrong, am I?
No, you're not. You're really not. First of all, and we'll get to the article that I wrote, for the Guardian. But you talk about labor. When I speak about 50, 60 times a year to industry groups around the country, and these are the most boring and unsexy groups. You can imagine that they manufacture corrugated containers and metal framing businesses and construction companies, but they're the core of American business.
Big hoot on a Friday night. They are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're the backbone of this country, and they are trying to figure out where to invest their money, how to spend their money. The economy is very important to them. So they read this stuff that comes out in the mainstream media about the economy, and they believe it. And they are as dubious as I am, though, about the numbers and where they're coming from. And, we're talking about labor data, but it's the same thing with GDP information. I mean, gross domestic product gets revised 4 or 5 times after it's released. And even Nate Silver's firm, 538, they did a big study a year ago, and they looked back over 40 years of GDP numbers. They found out they could be adjusted anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 points over the initial release. So you hear oh, GDP grew 2.5%. That's what the media reports. But then, 4 revisions later, it turns out it could have fallen by 1.2 points less than that, and that doesn't seem to get reported as much.
And here's just in the headlines this week, and we saw this. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has no idea what they're doing. Clearly, because, it wasn't long ago that they revised down the number of jobs by 1 million that they claimed that Joe Biden had created as president. By 1 million. I mean, it's not like they missed by a bit. They missed the whole damn thing. And so now they revised down for May and June to 14,000, 15,000 jobs each month. How do you miss that? Obviously, the way they're doing it is worthless. And in business, you cannot make a plan. You cannot forecast. You cannot do your job as a fiduciary or anything else if you don't know what the hell's coming or what you're dealing with. If you've got bad numbers, you can't make good decisions.
Couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. And when I look at, say, the labor numbers, for example, I cover the economy for the Guardian. I write for the Hill. I write for the Washington Times. So I write about these issues for the same reason that you just said, because business owners need to know this stuff. And I don't rely on these government numbers. When Trump said last, that it's all made up numbers, and he fired the head of the BLS, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's about time. First of all, not that the jobs are as important as they used to be.
And hold on, I want to ask you this, and I'm firing the person in charge of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the left screams like smashed cats. Like this is the worst thing that's ever happened. My God, you can't do it. Well, I don't care who you are. Well, she didn't do the numbers. But I don't care. If you're putting out crap numbers and it's your operation, you're the person that gets held accountable. And it's clear that they've been putting out crap numbers for a long time. And I'm being as polite as I can on a family program. So, seriously. I mean, come on, Gene. You can't work with garbage.
If you really want to track jobs in the country, and by the way, the definition of job is something I'd like to talk about with you because that's really changing. But if you want to track jobs, stay away from the government. I'll tell you who I track. ADP and Paychex are the 2 biggest payroll and HR firms in the country, and every month they publish real employment information. This is not a survey. They're not going door to door, which apparently is what the BLS is doing.
No, they can tell you how many people they're sending checks to. That's right. How many checks are we mailing out?
Data from their systems. Right. So when ADP comes out and says these jobs are added or wages have gone up, This is like not
They
like
know.
made up numbers. You know what I
Right,
mean?
they
That's
know
what I
because
rely on.
if their payroll, if they're sending out $100 in May and $110 in June, they can say, well, wages went up 10%. Pretty easy to figure out, right? That's pretty easy.
Yes.
So, but again, people in D.C. are mathematically illiterate and financially illiterate. They really are, and it's a sad thing. I think what you were going to say here, and we've only got a couple minutes here, I want to get it in. When you measure jobs, you have to measure full-time jobs. Not somebody who's going to work for 8 hours a week or 16 hours. You need to measure full-time jobs or full-time equivalent.
I actually think that we need to completely readdress how we're defining jobs in America nowadays because jobs have changed, Steve. I mean, I cover small business. Every month there are between 400,000 and 500,000 new startups that begin in this country, which is fantastic. And these startups are freelancers and side giggers and people that have extra jobs, people driving Ubers, Airbnbs, whatever. They don't get counted in the Department of Labor's numbers. The Department of Labor doesn't count certain part-time jobs as
So
well.
wait a second.
To me,
wait a second. Yeah, somebody's driving, and I talk to Uber drivers all the time. It's one of my hobbies. I love it. I talk to when I'm in D.C., where I'll be back in a week. I love talking to Uber drivers because they're fascinating, a lot of them, how they got there, what their story is. A lot of these drivers are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and they don't get counted as working in the economy?
No, they're independent contractors. They don't have actual right. So I think to myself, like, are we? The economy has changed and the world has changed, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics has not changed, Steve, and neither is the government. To me, I think it's about income. I mean, I'd like to know that Uber driver how much money that person made last year and how much money that person is making this year. If the money is more and that person is doing better, I think that's an overall better indication of how the economy is doing than whether or not somebody has a job or whether or not they're being counted. And when it looks at income, we have various sources to track the income that people are making from the IRS to payroll companies as well and other places where we can actually start determining how good are Americans doing? What is their income level? Are they staying ahead of inflation or not? And we don't want to use surveys, by the way. We want to use actual data from some of these sources because that Uber driver doesn't get counted. The person they opened the Airbnb,
okay,
somebody
so
that
here
has
it
a
is.
$40,000 a year job is making money, another $40,000 on the side, selling on Etsy and Amazon. Where is that counted? Right?
They're
And that's an
working.
indication of the economy.
Right, they're paying their mortgage, they're making their car payment, they're feeding the kids.
Right.
That's. I agree with you. By the way, I had to go check this. I love AI for this. More than 1 million Uber drivers in America today. More than 1 million that are not being counted in the workforce. Gene,
Agreed.
Nice to meet. First time you ever been here, I think. You come back anytime. You're fascinating and you're fun. And the people you talk to might be a little boring, but you're not.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun to talk about this stuff and hopefully bring some change, Steve, the kind of work that you're doing. I mean, the word gets out there and, things change because of people like yourself.
Yeah, we ring the bell, bang the gong, smash the pans together, whatever. But yeah, 1 million people, and that's just one example of people that are not being counted. Gene Marks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Really appreciate it. What a nice surprise he was. The next big surprise, Ivy will be in the room. I'll be back. It's a Free for All Friday.